Hello everyone, welcome back to On the Fly. Here recapping day one of the Men's World Championship happening in Herding, Denmark and Stockholm, Sweden. So we'll start, of course, with the scores from today's game, starting with Group A, where we'll see a 2-1 victory for Finland over Austria. Now, this was a game that, for Finland, it was a tough game. And not necessarily tough in the fact that it was a slugfest, for the Finns. They outplayed Austria. They did. For the majority of this game, Finland found themselves in the dominant player. But there were moments where we saw Austria do what they do best, chippy moments, sort of finding opportunities. And that's what we sort of talked about. We talked about it yesterday in our prediction video about how this Finnish game against Austria wasn't going to be as much of a dominant effort as much as you're going to see this be a tight game. Because between these two teams, they're both teams that are going to play a defensive style and find opportunities when they're presented. And, you saw that today. Between these two, and for Austria, you played exactly the game you needed to. You keep Finland real close, and yes, this might not be the best Finnish team that we've seen in years past, but for Finland, they are still a good team, and Austria today showed that they're a team at this tournament that's going to be ready to play. And you take out the one goal that got called off for Austria, this one could be a very different game. So a 2-1 final for Finland over Austria, and this one, it was a good game for both sides. I think they definitely played the way they wanted to, but of course, Finland with the winner, winning 2-1, they'll get the 3 points. Austria will have no points because, once again, it only matters what the final score is. If you still don't find yourself in the winning spot, it means nothing. So for Finland today, they will get the 3 points. They don't ask how many. But still a good game for Finland today. They played well, just sort of moments that they have to clean up. And for Austria, just showing themselves to be a team at this tournament that are going to cause some problems. So good for both sides. Move to the second game now, where it was a little bit less of good for both sides, with Sweden 5, Slovakia 0. And this was a game that I think you can best describe as Sweden playing their style of game. And what I will say that really impressed me about this Swedish team today was that the goals that were scored were hardly from their top units. And, you think about their top two lines for Sweden. We talked about it coming in, the NHL presence on the top two lines, how that was going to be the driving factor for this team. Then you see them play, and it's the third line guys, it's the fourth line guys that are really driving the force and finding opportunities. And that's where you see this game coming from. And yes, the top line was dominant in this game as well, but for the Swedes, they're having now 4 lines of offense that are generating. That's what you need if you're going to be a championship level team. And for the Swedes, they can continue that success, get their top lines rolling as well. This is a dangerous Swedish team that we're going to see do some real damage at this tournament. So, 5-0 final. The Slovaks today just outgunned. Not too much to talk about for them. So we will switch over now to the news for Group A, where we'll see Finland here with weekend. Coming into this tournament, we talked about it quite a bit. This isn't the Finnish team of old that we were used to seeing at this tournament. Yes, it's still Finland. They're going to play their trap style. It's probably going to work against some teams. They'll still be a top team at this tournament, but they're not to the level that they once were, where, they're blowing out teams and really handling teams that we're used to seeing from Finland at these kind of tournaments. You also add in the new coach, which I know a lot of people are unhappy about. For Finland, this game really reflected that, I thought. And as much as you still get the 3 points, if you look at the standings, we'll show in a couple slides from here now, it doesn't matter whether it was a 2-1 game or a 7-0 win. These are the kind of games of momentum that you're looking for. And yes, once again, the Austrian goaltender did stand on his head. But for a team like Finland, you need to be generating more high-quality chances and finding the back of the net, especially early in games, to take teams like Austria, like France, like Latvia, who you'll be playing later, out of games. If you let them hang around like you let Austria, that goal that went in, that second goal for the Austrians, is going to count instead of getting called off, and all of a sudden you're going to be in a real world of hurt. So for Finland today, weekend. As for Austria, continuing to fight on. They're a team at this tournament that are very much fighters, and they're not necessarily the best team on paper, but they're going to continue to fight right to the very end. We saw that today for Austria, continuing to fight on. As for Slovakia, weakened, and times 2, as obviously it's the same one for Finland. But for Slovakia here, we knew coming into this tournament, once again, it wasn't even the same Slovakian team of old. A lot of the NHL players left off or still in the, or not left off per se, and didn't want to come, blah, 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 right? Still in the NHL playoffs, whatever it might be. But for Slovakia, we saw it today, that gap. And yes, you're playing arguably the best team at this tournament. Maybe you throw Canada in there as well. But it's a tough start to a tournament for a Slovak team, and they didn't have that many good chances that you can be, okay, there's momentum to draw from, because the truth is that one was an ugly one from start to finish, and really the only thing that kept them in was Sweden got over fancy, and that's one of the things, for me at least, that kind of showed that, and you could definitely see sort of the lack, the discrepancy of skill level there. Yes, it's an opening game, can't read too much into it, but something to monitor throughout this tournament, whether or not that sort of skill discrepancy starts to parity out, or if it continues to get further apart for the Slovak team as they look to try and make a push for the quarterfinal spot. Something to keep an eye on there, but we'll now move to the scores from Group B today. We'll start, of course, with the Czechs and the Swiss, and I think this might have been the game of the day. You can also argue for the Finland-Austria one, but this was the game of the day. And a 5-4 victory for Czechia over Switzerland in overtime. This was a game, back and forth. And you saw the Swiss go up early, and then you saw the Czechs come back, and then you saw the Czechs go up, and then you saw the Swiss come back, and then you saw the Swiss go up, and you saw the Czechs come back, and you saw the Czechs win it in overtime. But this was the kind of game for these two teams where you're looking at the best teams at this tournament in terms of firepower, defensive ability, and goaltending. And for the Czechs today, they lacked in their goaltending. And Vejmelka wasn't great. You think early he was very poor. But the later you went on in this game, the better he got. And in many ways, he was the reason why the Czechs ended up winning this game the way that they did, because you take away a few of his key saves late, this game, once again, is going to be a very different game than what it was. So for the Czechs, yes, not first game woes, whatever you want to call it, something to keep an eye on, especially as this tournament goes on, if their goaltending can shore up or not. And then for Switzerland, they played a real good game today. Unfortunately, they just got beat by a better Czech team. So that's what we got here for the first one, a 5-4 victory for Czechia in overtime over Switzerland. And then the second game of the day, we go with the USA and Denmark. This was a 5-0 victory for the USA. And this was, in my eyes, another game where we just saw a better team playing against a weaker opponent. And, very similarly to the Sweden-Slovak game, it was one that I think very well reflected the two teams on the ice. And for the U.S., this is a good start to the tournament, what you're looking for. And you look at some of where the goals came from. It's some of the guys you weren't really expecting to be scoring at this tournament. But in the same respect, I think it's the kind of guys that you need to be scoring at this tournament if you want to make it far. So the U.S. today, you always want to see your top guns firing. You look at that top line with Cooley and Thompson. Those are the kind of guys you want to see get going. And they played well today. So just once again, you're looking for progress. That's what you're looking for from the U.S. For Denmark today, I thought they did play. I thought they played pretty well. And they got quite a few good quality chances on net. Unfortunately, couldn't bury them. But, one bounce here or there, all of a sudden that momentum, which we're going to talk about here in a second, it just gets changed that much more. So we'll flip over now to the news because I don't want to leave you guys in too much suspense. But with the Czechs, with the details. And for the Czechs, if they want to make it far in this tournament, it comes down to the minor details. You got to play a full 60 minutes of hockey. Otherwise, you run into problems. Right? When we look at what the Czechs did, they had lapses. And whether it was their goaltending, their defensive structure, their penalty, their discipline, there were lapses in this game that ended up costing them and very well could have cost them, the win, or even better, any points in this one if they would have lost in regulation. But this Czech team, if they're going to find it, they need to figure out how to play a full 60 minutes for the entire team and not just picking out one or two players, but for the entire team, because if they can find that game, they're a very dangerous team at this tournament, and one that I think could very well contend for the gold medal. As for Switzerland, holding leads is something that I think they should be keeping an eye on, because if you go up against any team, you should hope to hold that lead. Unfortunately for the Swiss today, they did blow 2 leads. The end result is a loss for them in that one. So that's what we got for the Swiss. Then on to Denmark, we go with momentum. The home team, you see it. And whether it's with Sweden today, where you get the home crowd into it, and then all of a sudden it's the rolling ball or the snowball rolling down the hill, or whatever analogy you want, where momentum continues to pick up and pick up and pick up until you find the puck in the back of your net 6, 7, 8 times. And for Denmark today, if they got 1 or 2 bounces against the U.S. team, this game could have been very different. It's about turning that momentum the way that you want it to be. And we've seen home ice at these kind of tournaments. We saw it last year with the Czechs, where 1 or 2 goals all of a sudden turns the tide in a game because your momentum is amplified by your crowd. And I think for a team like Denmark, who are looking to try and get into the quarterfinals, that's the path that they need to find. So for Denmark today, momentum was the storyline. Unfortunately, couldn't get much. And then for the USA with Freeberg, yeah, I know, it's back. It's back. Freebird is back for the U.S., and I have to say, I haven't missed it. Having done the U18s, which was Dream On as their goal song, Freebird for this tournament, I did not miss it one bit, but we are back with Freebird as the USA's goal song, so look forward to hearing a lot of that at this tournament. But that will do it for our news. We'll now flip over to the standings, where we'll see Sweden and Finland in first place in Group A with 3 points each. Austria and Slovakia both in last place with 1 regulation loss each. Then to Group B we go with the USA in first place with 3 points, Czechia in second with 2, Switzerland in third place with 1 point, and then Denmark in last place in the relegation spot with 1 regulation loss each. Not too much to talk about with the standings. Once again, it's the 3-2-1-0 system. 3 points for a regulation win, 2 for an overtime/shootout win, 1 for an overtime/shootout loss, and then no points for a regulation loss. For any of our NHL fans who are recently migrated over the IIHF because your team's probably knocked out, like mine is, welcome aboard. But at the same time, that's how they do it in the IIHF. Very similar to the Four Nations tournament as well. So USA, Czechia, Switzerland in Group B with Denmark in last. And then you have Sweden and Finland in the top spot with Austria and Slovakia in last place in Group A. We'll now flip to our schedule. We'll start here in Group A tomorrow, starting at 6:20 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll have Slovenia against Canada. This will be, once again, a game that I would highly anticipate, Slovenia taking control and dominating Canada dominating from start to finish in this one. This is a game for Canada that I think is going to be an awakening at this tournament. I think you'll see them sort of start a little slow and then find their groove as this game goes on. And it's going to get ugly. And I'm not saying it's not going to get ugly, because it's going to get ugly real fast in this one. But I think you'll see Slovenia have a little bit of a push, and then I think you'll see this game get out of hand. So that's what we have for the first one. Then to 10:20 we go with Austria against Sweden. This is, once again, another game where I think we're going to see a tough Austrian team against a tough Swedish team. And as much as I think you're going to see an Austrian team that's going to fight, I think you're going to see a Swedish dominant performance that's going to either result in some mistakes, overpassing like we saw today, end up in the back of your net off the Austrian counterattack, or you're going to see Sweden dominate this game from start to finish and win in convincing fashion. I think this will be a game that very well could end up a very tight one, and I think it could be a game that could end up a very blown out one. And I think it's just a matter of which Swedish team comes to play. If they get too cute with the puck, I think you could see a little bit of problem for the Swedes, but if they play their game, they play their style, I think they'll be just fine in this one. So that one's coming up at 10:20 a.m. Eastern. Then at 2:20 p.m. Eastern, between France and Latvia, in my eyes, the game of the day here. Two teams who are going to be battling for a quarterfinal spot at this tournament. This is the kind of game that's a must-win for both these teams. I'd expect Latvia to take this one, but don't be surprised to see this one get battled out right to the very end. These are two teams who are very close in skill level, and I think when you look at the way these two teams contrast with each other, these are the kind of games that you need to win if you want to make the quarterfinals. So, a must-win game for both these teams. Expect them to come out guns a-blazing. Your game of the day in Group A, 2:20 between France and Latvia. Then to the Group B, we will go starting at 6:20 with Norway and Kazakhstan, 6:20 a.m. Eastern. This is a game I'd expect to see. Obviously, the first look we'll get with Norway and Kazakhstan at this tournament. But I do expect Norway to take this one. We'll see once again what kind of team we're looking at with Kazakhstan. They're a team built up of a couple different set of players. But I do expect to see Norway kind of be able to stifle a lot of what Kazakhstan is going to put forth in terms of their offensive ability. A lot of what Kazakhstan does is their offensive approach, and we'll see whether or not Norway is able to counterattack that through their defensive approach. We'll see which one ends up winning. That'll be a real good game to watch at 6:20 a.m. Eastern time. Then we'll move to the second game of the day between Germany and Hungary. This is a game I would expect to see Germany kind of walk through a little bit more. Hungary's the recently promoted team in Group B. If you watched my prediction video yesterday, I have a little bit of hope for this Hungary team. I think that they have a shot against Kazakhstan to avoid relegation, but I have trouble, saying for certain if Hungary will win that game. I think until we get to that point, it's going to be a tough road for Hungary to get a lot of momentum going. But if they do, it's never over. And you talked about the underdog stories at this tournament. It's never written in stone who's going to win a game. So as much as I might think Germany's the winner of this one, very well could be Hungary. As much as I think Norway is going to beat Kazakhstan could win that game. So lots to still be sort of played out at this tournament. Lots to pay attention to, because really is anyone's tournament, and especially in the quarterfinal round, or to get to the quarterfinals. There's a lot of mixtures that can still sort of take place. But for Germany, I think they will take this one fairly handedly. And then to the third game of the day, we go at 2:20 p.m. Eastern time between Denmark and Switzerland. Switzerland, I'd expect to play their style of game and beat Denmark. But once again, Denmark on home ice. We talked about it earlier. It all comes down to the momentum they can generate. If they can get a quick goal, turn the tide in the hockey game, don't be surprised to see Denmark pull off the upset against the Swiss. So I'd expect, in terms of games of the day for Group B, I think that first one between Kazakhstan and Norway is going to be your game of the day. I think it'll be a tight game regardless of who outplays who. I just think, look at the scoring touches, which I think slightly would favor Kazakhstan versus the defensive approach in Norway. We'll see which team comes out on top. But that will do it for our scheduled program. We'll now move into our live questions. We start here from one from Nick, the Iihf fan, who says, number one, that Switzerland-Czechia gold medal game rematch did not go the way I thought it would. Not so much who'd win, rather the fact that it'd be 4-4 going to overtime. Number two, who do you think that Sweden-Slovakia game said more about? And to be honest, we'll start with the first one. I wasn't terribly surprised about how close it was. I thought it'd be a close game, with, of course, the Czechs winning it. I was a little surprised with how many goals were scored from both those teams. Obviously, two offensive powerhouses, but you look at kind of the goals that were scored, and there were lapses in judgment, whether it was the penalties, whether it was, the 5-on-3, or you can even talk about the goaltending. It wasn't necessarily goals that were goal scorers' goals. It was more so goals that were ugly goals. So in terms of that one, not too surprising. Then the Sweden-Slovakia game was one that I personally saw coming in our prediction video. I think I had the game 5-1 Sweden, so not quite what the final score was here, but still, it was Swedish dominance. And this isn't the same Slovak team we once saw at these kind of tournaments. You're missing a lot of your star-studded talent. And then for Sweden, you pick up a lot of that talent. So I just think that was just a game of this tournament showing an early stage of what to expect from these two teams. But other than that, that will do it for our coverage today. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you like, drop a like. If you're subscribing, tell all your friends to comment down below your thoughts on day one of the Men's World Championship. Until next time, see you.